Bringing you the top stories from Bonners Ferry to St. Mary's and everywhere in between, this is the North Idaho Prepcast with Ryan Scaggs.
That's right. Welcome in. Another edition of the North Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com, breaking down districts 1 and 2 each week in the state of Idaho. Brandon Baney, as always, joined by our resident North Idaho expert, Ryan Scaggs. What's going on, Scaggs? How you doing?
Not too much. Just I'm doing well. Surviving just like you guys did last week with baseball. So yeah, there was probably a little less sun up here than you guys had down south. So
yeah, the first day at state baseball, because all of the baseball tournaments this year, 5A through 1A, were all in the Boise Valley. And of course, we brought every pitch to you live and free on IdahoSports.com. And Thursday was actually like kind of cold. It was like overcast and windy. And I was in a nice booth, but some of our broadcasters were actually out in the wind. And I think they're still chilled to the bone a little bit. It was kind of a cool day, but
yeah. Do you think that the weather had much to do with, on that first day with some of the results that we saw from teams, especially, the teams that had more offense and the ball was maybe a little more dead on that first day?
Yeah, I don't know. I think just in general in high school baseball, kind of like in the major leagues, the pitching is really far ahead of the hitting right now. I mean, most teams, I did the 3A tournament, and as I'm researching all of these teams, I mean, they had twice as many, or in some cases 3 times as many strikeouts as walks, across the board. And to me, that's just the pitching's better than the hitting. And so, yeah, even when you do make contact, it can be hard sometimes. But in high school baseball, at least what I've seen, defense is the number one key. I can't tell you how many games I saw where teams lost because of defense. So probably makes sense, right?
Unforced errors and stuff. And I mean, I was just thinking like Lewiston, for example. I mean, obviously they had a tough draw, but it wasn't in that first game. It wasn't necessarily a result that I was expecting to see from a team that we had seen pretty much be a buzzsaw up north for most of the year.
Yeah, well, let's start there. I was going to start at 1A because that's where we had the most success in terms of North Idaho. But let's start with 5A baseball since you brought it up. Yeah, Lewiston came down to state. They were the 4 seed overall according to the Max Preps rankings, which, to be honest, I was surprised they were seeded that high, not because they're not good, but because this Max Preps ranking system is sort of stacked against the teams from the north. It's really hard for north teams to break through and get that high seed unless they are gaudy and are 22-0 like Lake City was in basketball. But so Lewiston goes down and loses to Owyhee 6-4 in the first round. Well, it turns out Owyhee would go on to win the whole thing. So looking back, that wasn't too bad. But Lewiston had the lead and then gave it up and had an interesting journey to the consolation final where they played Bora on Saturday. The game went 10 innings, which is long for a high school game because it's 7 innings regularly. And Cruz Hepburn ends it with a walk-off home run.
Walk-off bomb. That was awesome. Yeah.
It was hilarious. I was talking yesterday to Wayne DeZubak, who was broadcasting that tournament, and he said, we got to the bottom of the 10th, and before I could even say, well, here's Hepburn up to bat, he'd already swung at the first pitch, and the ball was already leaving the yard before he could even say it was Hepburn that was up to bat. So
he was ready for he was ready for summer camp for football. So he was trying to get things over with quickly and get out of there. So.
Yeah, no doubt. So, but for Lewiston, it was nice for them to come home with a trophy, and I think a very impressive season overall for the Bengals.
And a lot of that roster will be back too. There's a lot of youth on that roster, so they're not going to turn over a ton. I mean, it hurts obviously losing kids like Cruz, but there's some dudes that are younger on that roster that'll be back, and I think Lewiston's going to be solid again next year. If we're going to kind of forecast 2023 baseball, but. No, there's definitely a lot to be proud of for the Bengals on the way they finished the year.
Yeah, and you mentioned Cruz Hepburn moving on to summer ball now. He's going to play, I think it's linebacker for the Idaho Vandals, right? Is that what it was?
Yep. Yeah. They're going to put him on the defensive side of the ball.
And it's easy to forget because he is such an awesome football player, but he initially committed to play college baseball, right? He had an offer from, I think it was Washington State, right?
Yeah, and I know that he had LCS. He was trying really hard, but obviously, with athlete of that level. But there was a few schools that were after Cruz for baseball, and Idaho stepped in on the football side, and that's kind of where his heart was really leading him. So, he's just a great athlete. He could play probably all 3 sports if he really wanted to. But no, certainly a great career for Cruz and a good kid too.
Definitely. And I just want to correct, I was looking up as you were talking there. He committed to the Washington Huskies, UW for baseball,
That's right.
not Wazoo.
Yeah.
Big difference in Washington between those two schools. For sure. So
Cougs are on their they're coming back a little bit. I mean, they're trying, at least they got hot towards the end of the year, but they got blanked in the Pac-12 tournament. But yeah.
It's hard to compete against those SoCal teams, UCLA, USC,
Well,
and the Arizona schools, and
you got to compete against the Beavers, man. Come on, the Beavs are solid. So
I'm wearing my UCLA shirt today, so I got to talk about Coach Savage and that UCLA Bruins baseball program. They're pretty good at getting guys to the big leagues, but they're not so great at getting out of the first or second round of the NCAA tournament in baseball. So,
yeah.
But anyways,
we can. Yeah, there's plenty of that talk to go around. I think this summer too, that there's going to be a lot of with the NIL stuff and the transfer portal and everything else. There's going to be some Idaho kids to keep tabs on that are moving around a little bit too.
Definitely. Yeah. We'll try to keep up with that as best as we can here in the off season. All right. So let's get back to baseball. We talked about 5A, but let's jump down to 1A, because that's where we saw the most success in terms of teams from the North. And I kind of had a feeling this was going to happen coming in. We did our state baseball preview show and everybody was talking about, well, North Star Charter's awesome. Guess what? They were awesome last year too, and they still lost in the championship. I said, until somebody proves to me that a team from District 3 can win state, I said, it's the White Pine Leagues to lose. And I said, if North Star isn't careful, they might lose in the opening round. And no, I didn't think anybody else from District 3 was going to win. So the fact that the White Pine swept the first round 4-0 and all four teams were in the semis, like that didn't shock me too much.
Yeah. And that's just a lot to say about the quality of ball up here, but I think it has a lot to do with, the Legion programs and the traveling teams and everything else, so that a lot of these smaller communities, I mean, they really embrace baseball. And that's the thing about like North Idaho. I think a lot of it has to be said about the historical success of like programs like Lewis Clark State. And it just kind of, it finds its way back into the communities, and you find some of these smaller town kids going and playing for the Warriors, or they're going and playing, Treasure Valley and some other schools that offer ball. So there's some decent kids at these smaller schools, but the White Pine is just absolutely dominant when it comes to two things, baseball and basketball.
No doubt. And congratulations to the Troy Trojans. First baseball title in school history. They won 4-2 over the defending champs from Genesee. That was a hard-fought game and really a hard-fought tournament, but with their pitching, I mean, Troy looked really good at the 1A state tournament. So
yeah. And that was a lot to be said about Troy down the stretch. I mean, we mentioned it a few times on the Prepcast, like keep an eye on these guys. They were kind of like hanging out in second place for a while, and you're like, is this team for real or not? Have they really been challenged? And then down the stretch, they were just lights out. And obviously having a great tournament too. And congrats to Troy, because that was a, to not only win your league title, I think says a lot, but then you go into the state tournament and to get into state with the league teams that you have and to win the state championship that way, there's no easy days for sure.
Definitely. And Prairie defeated Clearwater Valley 4-0 in the third place game. So the Pirates bring home third. Things kind of normalized a little bit, where at districts, Genesee and Troy were the 1 and 2 seeds, but they both lost. And it was Clearwater Valley and Prairie, the 6 and the 5 seed, getting the top 2 seeds from the district at state. But that kind of reversed back to where, okay, Genesee and Troy were the 2 best teams and they were playing for the championship.
I think we mentioned on that Prepcast too, before districts, you're saying like, hey, watch out for these teams like the 5 and 6 seeds, like it's anybody's battle. And sure enough, that was like, I don't know if one of us hit exactly on who made it. I think I picked Kamei and Prairie instead, and instead of Clearwater Valley. But great seasons by all those teams in that league. I mean, there's a lot to be said about that conference for sure.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun to watch the White Pine clean up again at the 1A state tournament. At the 2A state tournament, the 3-team CIL, Central Idaho, they got 2 teams to state, Ryan, because Orofino won the district title. St. Mary's, who came in as the third seeded districts, knocked out Grangeville. We kind of talked about this a couple weeks ago, but then they had to play New Plymouth in a state play-in game, and they won that game to get to state as well. And so you figure going in, Orofino and St. Mary's both go 2-out, and you're like, well, okay, St. Mary's, sure, they're kind of a plucky Cinderella team. They were probably in over there. No, St. Mary's performed better at state than Orofino did. Orofino went 2-out, in two fairly one-sided games. St. Mary's had 2 nail biters. Right.
Well, if you don't remember the league schedule too, I mean, yeah, Orofino won the district tournament. I believe St. Mary's had the upper hand all season on Orofino. So, St. Mary's was no slouch. They just played a tough schedule. They played a lot of the bigger schools. They played a 3A heavy schedule in North Idaho. I mean, they had Bonners Ferry and Timberlake a few times, and Kellogg as well, and throwing a smattering of like Lakeland and some other teams too. So, they were battle tested going into that game. It doesn't surprise me they performed well, but just kind of a weird result that they both went 2-out. I expected at least one of them to maybe play in the consolation title game. But to see them go 0-2 was kind of a disappointing result for sure.
Yeah, St. Mary's loses to Malad in the first round 3-2. So 1-run game that could have gone either way. And then in the loser out game, it went extra innings against the River Cats from Chalice Mackey, and they lost that game 9-6 in 9 innings, which is, I think they finally kind of just ran out of pitching at the end of that second game, but nicely done for both of those teams. Great seasons for Orofino and St. Mary's. Bonners Ferry represented the North from District 3 at state. First, I want to talk about Kellogg, though, knocking out Timberlake at district. So Ryan, the last time you and I were together on the Prepcast 2 weeks ago, I said, you know what? Call it a gut feeling, but I like Bonners Ferry to beat Timberlake in that district championship. And you raked me over the coals. I couldn't believe it. Look what happened.
Short of asking for you to be committed to an institution on that one, but yeah. And look at me, I was the one wrong. I don't know what happened, but man, things went off the rails for the Tigers, and congrats to Bonners Ferry on getting that district title. And man, they had a bit of a run though at state. I mean, going 2-out, which kind of stunk, but they had that heartbreaker to Snake River on Friday. You obviously got to do that tournament though, and there was still some bright spots for the Badgers. I would, say, for what they showed, but still, to not come away with some hardware, I think is a little bit of a disappointment for them.
Definitely. And the league as a whole, I think, was pretty solid this year. As we talked about, Timberlake, the number 1 seed, not only lost to Bonners Ferry in the district title game, but then Kellogg knocked them out as well. And Kellogg got to go to the play-in game against Homedale, where that was a pitcher's duel throughout. It was 1-1 through 7 innings of regulation baseball. It was a 1-1 game into the 9th inning. And then Luna was pitching for Kellogg, and he's a stud, but he ran out of pitches on the pitch count. And once Kellogg had to bring in a reliever, then Homedale kind of blew it open. But Kellogg had a nice season as well. But yes, for Bonners Ferry, right away, they have to play Marsh Valley, the eventual 3A champs. They lose that game 13-0, which, didn't surprise anybody. Marsh Valley beat everybody by the 10-run rule. But that loser out game against Snake River, they led 1-0 for a large majority of that game. It got down to the bottom of the 7th. Snake River was down to their final out, and they had a runner at first base. And the number 7 hitter, this kid named Cooper Keller, came up and hit an RBI triple to tie the game, send it to extra innings. We go to the bottom of the 8th inning. Snake River's got a runner at second. With 1 out, there's a high pop up into center field, and I feel so bad for Nick Eastman. He comes on to make the grab, and he looks up, and it's one of those deals where you lose it in the sun, and you think you're in the right place, and the ball lands like 5 feet away from him. And so with that, the kid from Snake comes around to score the game-winning run, and Bonners Ferry loses 2-1 in 8 innings in a game in which they out-hit Snake River 10-5, but they left double-digit runners on base. They left a lot of guys on base, and so that ultimately is what hurt Bonners Ferry in that loser-out game. But after the game, I got to talk a little bit with the parents of the Bateman boys, Trey and Bo. Bo is a senior. Trey is just a junior or a sophomore, and they have a younger cousin, Thomas Bateman, that's on the team as well. And so I got to talk to their dad a little bit after the game, and we had a nice chat. And he said, "Thanks for picking us to beat Timberlake." And he said, "I don't think I like that Scaggs guy too much anymore."
Oh man. Oh,
He was kidding,
it's-
of course,
yeah,
but
of course. Yeah. It's like, oh, fine. I won't pick your kid anymore to make all league. All right. Yeah. I
it
won't
was
be
funny.
petty. I'm kidding. I won't be petty. That's pretty funny though.
Yeah. So they, all things considered, Bonners Ferry was in pretty good spirits after that heart-wrenching game. And I think they're going to be really good. Talking to their coach, Tom Turpin, before state, he said, we have a lot of juniors. He said, we only have 3 seniors. He said, but we've got like 10 or 11 juniors. So, I would say keep an eye out for Bonners Ferry again next year as well in what will be a 2-team league. And so, the Batemans were asking me, hey, how does that affect us next year? Do you think, having 2 teams? And I said, if you win your district, you'll probably have to win a play-in game as well. That's probably how that's going to go. So,
Yeah,
but they
I
could
can
do
see
it.
that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think, and where's that bid going to move to? What district is going to get that extra spot? And it really does throw a wrench in things statewide at the 3A level, losing, because I want to say that there's also a few other schools in southern Idaho that are moving down too. So it's really, we could go back into the classification talk again, but a pretty dang good case for changing the classifications, just saying. But yeah.
Yeah, 3A is withering away.
It needs to be absolved. It needs to be absorbed by the top half needs to go to 4A and the bottom half needs to go to 2A. But yeah, that's just me.
Yeah. Anyways.
To Sandpoint baseball, huge bright spot. The Bulldogs, in my mind, I think were kind of I don't want to say the Cinderella team, but they were the ones I don't think really people looked at finishing the way that they did. And they came in the tournament and just absolutely boat raced Pokey in the consolation title game. And sorry, I dropped my pen. Obviously they had to draw Bishop Kelly. That's a tough draw for the Bulldogs to walk into that game, but made a nice run and ended up with a trophy. And Jack Zimmerman had a great tournament for the Bulldogs. And so hats off to that crew for getting the consolation title. I think that's a big, big bright spot for Sandpoint to finish with some hardware.
And this is what I was talking about, the Max Preps ranking. Sandpoint went in as the 7 seed. There was no way that Sandpoint was the 7 seed in that tournament. I would have put them at 5th personally.
Yeah,
but
they've got 2, but it's like, yeah, they're playing Coeur d'Alene and Lake City, and they're playing Lewiston and Post Falls. I mean, you look at the schedule and it's like, man, they're just, of course, like they're going to have some lumps on their schedule. Like they're playing a 5A team heavy schedule with some good 5A schools. It's, they held their own and they finished with heart. I think Sandpoint was kind of the seeding didn't do them justice by any means.
Yep, and it probably will continue to be that way, unfortunately, moving forward as well. So let's move on to softball, where we had a champion, just like in 1A baseball. The White Pine League always seems to do well at state. Potlatch, after falling just short last year, comes through and delivers on the 1A title, and it was an all WPL final. They beat Genesee in the championship game in kind of a close game, 8-6, but there was a lot of hiccups at this tournament. There were lightning delays and rain delays and all this other crazy action. Kendrick was there as well. They went 2-out, but Potlatch softball coming through and winning, and they were one of the favorites last year at the 1A state softball tournament and didn't deliver on the championship. So it was nice to see them bounce back and win here in 2022.
Well, especially a team that only got to start the year. I think in the first month of play, they only played 2 games just because of snow. So, to go down the stretch and play as much ball as they did and end up with a state championship, hats off to the Loggers, and a great season, ended up with that 1A state championship and a great group of kids. And, a solid finish for what looked like kind of a weird start to the year and a lot of question marks with weather that we've had this year. If they could even get a lot of their schedule in to end up with the titles was pretty rewarding. That's awesome.
Definitely. And so Coach Dean Butterfield is the coach. His daughter, Rebecca Butterfield, is a pitcher. They've got other great players, Josie Larson, Emma Chambers, et cetera, et cetera. So it was nice to see Potlatch come through with the win. The next biggest story, I think, is from the 2A state tournament, where St. Mary's, we knew coming in there was a big 3 in 2A softball. It was Malad, the defending champs, West Jefferson, and St. Mary's. And it was just a matter of, who was going to beat who. And St. Mary's gets to that undefeated semifinal. It's St. Mary's, it's Malad, which was an opening round matchup at state last year, by the way. So score one for the Max Preps bracketing that we didn't have that right away. and Malad wins that game 1-0. And I'm thinking, as I see this, I'm like, well, this bodes well that St. Mary's, only lost 1-0. They can come back through and maybe get some momentum by playing more games on the consolation side of the bracket and have a shot, but they never got there. They lost to West Jefferson again by a run, 6-5 in the third place game. And I never heard if that game had started and then the tournament got moved, or if the tournament got moved right before that game started. But when it was down to the final three, basically they said, the rain in Orofino is coming. Let's move it to Airport Park in Lewiston and conclude the tournament there. And that
sounds
probably,
that sounds like a podcast episode. When in doubt, move it to Lewiston, right?
We did have that topic earlier this spring. We sure did.
But yeah, I mean, Lewiston comes in clutch though, again, with the field conditions and having the amount of fields that they do. But yeah, that was just a weird kind of finish. It wasn't something. I mean, we knew that the field was stacked, at least for the top, like you said, the top three teams. I really did think St. Mary's had the chance though, to get to the title game. I really did think that with Tacey pitching and the way that they've been able to hit the ball, I thought they had a huge chance. But man, to go lose 1-0 is tough, and then you go down and lose to West J again 6-5 and have a little bit of adversity to overcome. A tough spot for the Lumberjacks, but a great season by no means. Like, should they be disappointed? But yeah, just not really. I don't think what they expected. I really think that they had huge title aspirations.
Yeah, big shout out though to Coach Todd Bitterman and that St. Mary's softball team. What a fun team it was to watch all year long. They were so.
I mean,
good.
Tacey Watkins is unbelievable, and she showed it again. I mean, to hold Malad to a run is awesome. I mean, there's a lot to be said about that. So,
yep.
That's a great season by his crew.
For sure. Let's go to the 4A state softball tournament, where Lakeland, kind of like Sandpoint in baseball, comes in as the number 8 seed overall. And again, I don't think Lakeland was the 8th best team there. That's just where they were seated. They lost to Bishop Kelly in the first round. Hey, spoiler alert, so did everybody else. Bishop Kelly won the title, like convincingly, running away with it. But then how about Lakeland winning 2 in a row to get to the 4th place game against Valley View? And they pushed, and Valley View was the team that ended up playing for the championship against BK, and they only lost that game 3-2. So Lakeland had a shot at a top 3 finish. I mean, they were a run away from it. So I was pretty impressed with the Hawks. Yeah,
the Hawks had a great run, and coming out of the district tournament the way they did, and ended up getting the league championship the way that they did. I mean, there was just a little bit of, sometimes it's better lucky than good. And I don't say they were lucky because they're a good team. Don't get me wrong. But it's like where preparation and opportunity meet is where luck shows up. And that was basically what happened. I mean, yeah, they get boat raced by BK, but then they get to come out and go guns blazing and get to that hardware game. Was, a great showing for Lakeland to get there.
Definitely. Coeur d'Alene represented the North at the 5A tournament. Kind of a weird, they beat Thunder. They were the 2 seed, and they beat Thunder Ridge 5-4 in the first round. But from there, they lost in the semifinals, and then they, I don't know if they were still reeling from that or what happened, but they turned around and lost the next game as well. So they won their opener, then went 2-0.
Yeah, you don't see that very often either from a team of that quality. It's kind of like, well, we're just going to take our ball and go home. But, to go 2-0 and bow out the way they did is certainly disappointing for the Vikings. But, it's obviously not the way they want to end things. But a great season, for the Lady Vikes and what they were able to do in their league schedule. But, yeah, not a disappointing finish for the North, I think, on the softball side, with the exception of Paul Leitch, for sure.
Yeah. And I just wonder if it was, it is hard to win for Coeur d'Alene with the game they lost out on. It was their 3rd game of the day, their 3rd game in, a 6-hour span. That's hard to do in softball. And I think they put so much into their so they beat Thunder Ridge 5-4, which was a tough, hard fought win. They put probably everything they had into that. Then the next game, they only lose to Timberline 2-0. And so, again, they probably poured everything they had into that game. And I think they got to that loser out and they played Eagle and they lost 17-0. I think they just were spent. I think they had nothing left,
especially if you're playing a 2-0 game that, it's almost like you're trying too hard. And, when you push yourself a little bit too much and you put a little bit too much pressure, and you still fall short, it says a lot when you get to that. You have to go play again. It's like, oh, turn around and play again. And it's like, you're just deflated. It's almost like you don't want to be there. You want a chance to recoup. And instead you got to step right back in the box and go at it again. And that's a tough go. That's not easy on anybody. And, hats off to the team for having the season they did. But yeah, that's having to play 3 games in a day is just brutal.
Definitely. And then 3A state tournament, Timberlake was there. They went 1-2. And then Kellogg went 2-out. So it was kind of a tough tournament, really dominated by districts 4 and 3 that ended up being the final 4, everybody from those 2 districts. So
yeah, and I'll say another thing about the Coeur d'Alene one too is that it's got to be tough having that happen at home. They hosted the state tournament, and to have that go that way, I mean, there's got to be some inherent disappointment too with being the host team. That makes a little bit more sense too, because that it does get some extra deflation on that one just because of things being a little bit tougher stacked against you. And it's like, well, we're at home, this should be going our way, but it doesn't always work that way, obviously.
Not every season has that storybook ending, unfortunately. Nope. So it's the way it goes. All right. Track and field, Ryan. We had just some sprinklings of individual champions. I think I'm going to list them all off, and then you kind of pick, the 1 or 2 that really stand out to you. So, all right, 5A track and field championships on the girls' side. Samantha Wood of Post Falls wins the 1,600 and the 3,200 meter run. Didn't surprise anybody. Lily Fennessy of Coeur d'Alene won the discus with the throw of 136 feet, 8 inches. At the 4A state track meet on the girls' side, Kenna Simon of Lakeland wins the high jump, clearing 5'2".
She didn't even know she won, by the way.
She didn't?
No.
Well, because her and another girl had both cleared 5'2", and what happens in the high jump is it comes down to, okay, well, did you scratch on any of your prior attempts? And I think she won by virtue of not scratching as much as the other girl, right?
Yeah.
What a wild story, though.
Yeah, she was standing there and she didn't even know she had won, and her coach is standing by the fence because the coaches aren't allowed on the track to coach at state. And so she's walking away from her attempt, and the guy goes, okay, good job. She's like confused, and she looks over at her coach and one of her teammates, and they're celebrating, and she had no idea that she had won the state championship.
That's awesome. What a cool story. High jump can be confusing sometimes if you aren't clean all the way. So
Coach Munier was the one that broke the news to her that she actually won.
That's awesome. Kenna Simon of Lakeland wins the 4A high jump, clearing 5'2". Class 3A girls, Bonners Ferry did well. Asha Abubakari from Bonners Ferry swept the throws, won the shot and the discus, and Morgan Burt ends up winning the pole vault by clearing 10 feet even. Class 2A girls, Lindy Kessinger of Orofino wins the discus. And on the 2A boys side, Abubakari of Bonners Ferry, we had a sweep as Reed Thomas of Orofino won the shot put and discus on the 2A boys side. And then at the 1A girls meet, Clara Anderson of Logos won the 2-mile, 3,200 meter run, and Alexis Herrera of Lapway won the discus. So what stands out to you?
Reed Thomas is one that stands out to me. And I looked at that toss. I'm like, man, 57 4 3/4 is a solid shot. That's a solid toss. And I go, that would do well at most classifications. Yeah, he would have won any classification. That's the best toss in the state of Idaho this year. And it happened at the state meet. So congrats to Reed on that shot put toss. That was a heck of a job by him to sweep the throws. Is a great job and a feat in itself. Samantha Wood, we knew was solid, and she came into the 800 and obviously had some stiff competition there. There's one that's kind of left off there, and it was like that Lake City girls 4x1 team won the state championship last year in the 4x1. They got runner-up this year in the 4x1. But their time was a half second faster than their state championship time of last year, and they still finished second. So that heat was just blazing fast in that relay. And so obviously finishing runner-up, but I believe Timberline was the team that took it on the girls' side. But just a great job across the board. Kenna Simon's story is great. I think that was awesome to hear that one. But Samantha Wood to cap off her career at Post Falls. hats off to her as well, because that was a solid finish in the distance runs.
Yeah, what a weekend it was of track and field. It was a weekend that I don't know that we'll ever see again. The record book was obliterated. Like
it was crazy.
Take a machete to it. I mean, records were falling left and right. And if you want a full recap of everything that happened and all the records that were broken, Marlo Herford wrote a great recap of that state track and field meet. It's on the homepage at IdahoSports.com. You should definitely check it out, because there were a lot of high caliber, high octane athletes competing. Like I said, I don't know that we'll ever see a weekend like it, an historic weekend like this ever again.
There was a lot of performances that were clutch too, that were kind of unseen. You saw the favorites go through prelims, and they were obliterating PRs in the prelims, and they go in the finals and they're not even finishing in the top 2 or 3. And it's, and you see some of these other kids that step up and they get their opportunity and they take it and, pun intended, run with it. But it's there. I mean, I look at some of the examples like in the 1A where Cadence Beck had been dominating all year. And, she doesn't even bring home a state championship, against a runner-up, I believe, in 3 events. But, so there's a few disappointments out there, but also, a lot to be proud of. But, a lot of those times that were the records that were broken too happened in some of the prelims, and some of them even in the finals too. There was a lot to be said about that state meet this year.
Yeah, these aren't North Idaho athletes, but these are cool nuggets to know. Two stats that basically sum up how wild the weekend was. A girl from Emmett set the new state record for pole vault. An hour later, it was broken by a girl from Centennial competing at the 5A meet. So you had the state pole vault record on the girls' side get broken twice by 2 different athletes, 2 different levels, in the span of like an hour. And at the 4A boys track and field meet, the winner of the 400 was a kid from Twin Falls, and he set the new state record. It was like 47 something. Like, I don't know.
It was like 47.8, and then it got broken by a kid that ran a 47.5.
So the kid from Twin set the new record, but guess what? The kids that finished second and third, they also broke the record for the 400. Yeah. So the top 3 finishers in the 400 all had a better time than what the previous 4A record was coming in. How nuts is that?
It's crazy. Yeah. And then the best time in the state was a 47.5. And yeah, it was just unbelievable. Some of the times that we saw that were getting turned in, especially in a lot of the sprints, or like the 1, 2, and 400 were just crazy. Some of those times that we saw.
Yeah, it was nuts. It was a wild weekend of track and field. And again, if you want a recap of that, we also have a state tennis recap as well on our homepage at IdahoSports.com. The teams from the north in tennis, it's really hard to make traction. Boise just dominates the tennis scene because the weather is so nice, and there's kids that play tennis year round down there in Boise.
A lot more clubs. Yeah, there's clubs to play in, and it's you're playing summer rec leagues up here. But I mean, there's, to go and compete, I know that there was a couple of kids from Sandpoint and a couple of kids from Coeur d'Alene. And I believe we had a kid that made it to the finals from Coeur d'Alene Charter as well, who lost to in the finals to a kid from, I believe it was Melba. But yeah, there's some decent kids that had some finishes up here that played very well.
Yeah, and Dylan Gomez from Lewiston had a runner-up in singles as well. So big shout out to him. And then golf, just wrap it up real quick. We didn't have any champions from golf, but Bonners Ferry girls, I'm telling you, keep an eye out. Braylon Bayer ended up taking, I'm trying to remember now, it was second or third. I think it was second. She took second behind the girl from Homedale. I think she's the favorite individual medalist next year, and I think the Bonners Ferry girls are going to be really good in golf next year.
Keep an eye on Genesis Prep on the boys' side. I really do think that team, they played really well down at state. I mean, I believe they had a top 4 finish, but they've got most of their kids back, and they got some youngsters that are coming up through that are going to be awesome. So, yeah, there's a lot to be proud of and looking forward to up here.
Definitely. All right, Ryan. Well, that was our kind of spring sports recap. They shoehorn it all into one weekend, so we have to shoehorn it all into one podcast, but we navigated that pretty well. That was pretty good.
Yeah. So next on the docket, obviously, is our summer, podcast, and then we got next play-by-play. It's football. I mean, we're like 4 months out.
Dude, so over the summer, we'll give you a little behind the scenes here at IdahoSports.com. Over the summer, we start putting in all of the fall sports schedules, volleyball, football, soccer. But this is the week where I email every athletic director in the state, because this is like for a lot of people the last week of school. I'm like, hey, before you duck out for a month this summer, can you send me your schedules so at least I have them? And I'm starting to get them in, and I'm already like salivating at all of these like football matchups and like making in my head.
Coeur d'Alene and Sandpoint have some.
Dude,
yeah,
it's gonna be awesome.
There's some good games
for sure. So here's what we're gonna do on the North Idaho Prepcast. We're gonna take next week off, kind of an end of the year recharge, refresh, reset. Because we've been doing, we've done 40 plus episodes of this, Ryan, over the course of the school year, which is crazy to think about. So we're going to take a week off, then we're going to come back with our summer series where we're going to, do some interviews with different athletes and different coaches from up north. So you get to know these athletes, these players a little bit better, these coaches a little bit better, get to know them as people. We know them as athletes and coaches. We know what kind of accomplishments they have, but what are they like away from the arena? What are they like outside the sports world? I think it's going to be a lot of fun. And a lot of these athletes are going to be, juniors that are getting ready for their senior year. So you'll be able to know, for example, this kid is expected to be the quarterback for his team next fall. And we got to hear him talk over the offseason. I think it's going to be a really fun series. So
yeah, no, I'm looking forward to it. Maybe we can bring on Mr. Bateman and he can read me the riot act too.
One last note on that. Coach Turpin from Bonners Ferry, he goes, every time I play somebody up north, the first thing they ask me, it's not, hey, how you doing? How's your season? Goes, how many Batemans you got left? Because it's such a prominent name up there. And Coach Turpin goes, I got bad news for you. I got about a dozen still to go. So,
It's like Lapway with having all the year outs coming through. It's like, you got rid of Titus. Congratulations. Now you get, 7 more.
Yeah, I couldn't believe it when he told me that. I was like, you have 7 siblings? He goes, yeah, I'm the oldest. I was like, okay, here we go. Let's do it. Yeah.
Run it back. Yeah. Run it back.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So stay tuned for that. We're going to try to have one every week here throughout the summer, little summer interview series because, just because there's no sports going on, we're not going away. We're not taking the summer off. We're going to be here giving you good content each and every week. So Ryan, as always, thanks for all of your hard work. We appreciate it.
Happy to join you.
Yep. All right. We'll see you next time on the North Idaho Prepcast on IdahoSports.com.